The first issue we'll address in our top 10 issues of the Christian faith is the thought that someone doesn't need Christ because in their mind they're good enough. The issue goes like this. I'm a good person, certainly better than old what's-his-name, so I'm sure I'll make it to heaven. The implication here is that they've got it all figured out on their own and they don't need any help, certainly not Christ's help. But why would they think this? The problem is obvious. What is good enough? How good does one have to be good enough? Usually it's a comparison to someone else who is worse in their opinion. But how do they know? Who gets to decide how good enough is? This turns into just a personal opinion. In fact, it's a personal delusion if there's no objective basis. Extending the belief that we can believe in anything we want shows that it just makes as much sense to believe in Santa Claus just because that's what I choose to believe. Well, at least this person believes in a standard, even if it's their own, and that's an interesting thought to ponder. The thing is, this is God we're referring to, the eternal creator and perfection of good. If it's His heaven, so it's His standard that we have to measure up to. So what is that? Well, doesn't it make sense that He must expect perfection since that's what He is? How could perfection join with imperfection? It would no longer be perfection, would it? Some think that following the 10 Commandments get the job done, but there's two problems with that. First, no one is able to keep them all their life. It's impossible. You and I have already broken them at least once, so we're doomed. And secondly, there's a hint towards the final answer. Even God tells us in Romans that we cannot be found righteous by observing the law. Instead, it's through the law that we become aware that we are sinners in need of redemption. That is clearly outside of our control. Now, two things can happen to us when we realize that we can't be good enough. We could be overcome with the feeling of futility, causing us to just forget the whole problem altogether. This, in fact, could be part of the reason that we tend to reach towards that answer that we've decided ourselves that we're good enough in the first place. And if this is the case, then that's an opening for the apologist to have a discussion with this person. Or, secondly, the futility could manifest itself as worry or dread. Once we realize there's no hope for us that's within our control, this type of futility could lead to depression or angst. And obviously that's another discussion path for the apologist to take, to relate the good news of God's free grace to the person who is struggling with fear. And that's really the bottom line, isn't it? This issue leads us directly to the grace of Christianity. Grace is the only path to freedom from this worry and angst. No other faith system offers grace. Only Christ, only Christianity. Once we expose the logical and practical futility of individual standards of performance, the only remaining answer is to surrender to the love of God shown to us through Christ, represented here by referring to the name of Christ, and trust in Him for our salvation.